It was 12:07 a.m. when the text came through. Come pick me up, please. No emojis. No punctuation. Not even a hey or can you. Just that. Short and cold. I stared at it for a second longer than I should have, half hoping she'd follow up with something like, I love you, or I miss you. But nothing came. Just the silence of my lock screen. She'd been out since 7. Work girls' night, she told me. Like that somehow explained everything. I remember standing in the kitchen earlier that evening, watching her pick out her outfit. Red blouse, tight black jeans, perfume she only wore for weddings or holidays. She was humming under her breath, curling her hair with more care than I'd seen in months. You guys dressing up for this? I asked, mostly to make conversation. She didn't look at me when she answered. It's just how I feel comfortable, she said. You think I'm trying to impress someone? I shook my head. Didn't say that. But I was thinking it. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my keys from the bowl by the door, and headed out. The air was cold for early spring. The kind that clings to your sleeves and makes the steering wheel feel like ice. I didn't even put on socks. Just slipped into my old sneakers and drove the 15 minutes to the Grove, a high-end bar on the east side of town. I hated that place. Not because of the overpriced drinks or the wannabe influencer crowd, but because it was the kind of place you went to be seen. It was curated chaos. Music always a little too loud. Lights always dim enough to feel like secrets could live there. The kind of place where people didn't go unless they were hoping to run into someone who wasn't their spouse. I parked on the corner, a little past the valet. I didn't want to be seen. Not that it mattered. She hadn't even texted back to say where she'd be standing. But something told me to look at the side exit. And there she was. Not alone. The first thing I noticed was how close he was to her. Some guy in a black button-down, sleeves rolled up to his elbows like he was trying too hard. He had one hand on her wrist, the other in his pocket. He was leaning in, saying something. Kim wasn't laughing, but she was smiling. Not the kind of smile you give a stranger who annoys you. It was softer than that. Familiar. Mate. Then I saw her squeeze his wrist. Not a pull away. Not a let go kind of motion. It was slow. Deliberate. That's when she looked up and saw me across the street. Her face didn't change. Not a flicker of guilt or surprise. Just a blank expression like she'd forgotten who I was for a second. Then she said something to him, turned around, and walked briskly toward the truck. She got in without saying a word, slammed the door, and pulled the seatbelt across her chest like nothing had happened. Thanks, she muttered. I stared straight ahead, trying to keep my breathing even. The smell hit me almost immediately. Her usual floral perfume was drowned under something heavy, muskier. Cologne. Male. It wasn't just the scent, though. Her lips were glossy, freshly reapplied. I didn't recognize the flavor, but it hit the back of my throat like something fruity. Not the chapstick she always kept in her purse. Her cheeks were flushed, and not in a tipsy kind of way. In a you just had someone close kind of way. You were really just with your coworkers? I asked, keeping my voice low, steady. She gave a half laugh, that smug little sound she always made when she thought I was being paranoid. You're doing this again? I'm asking a question, I said. Yeah, and accusing me in the process. She shook her head and turned toward the window, folding her arms across her chest. That was Josh. You met him once at the company holiday party. He's harmless. Some drunk guy wouldn't leave me alone inside, so Josh walked me out. Seemed close, I said. She snapped her head toward me, eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. You want to know why I don't invite you to these things? She said after a beat. Because you always do this. You always assume the worst. No, I said. I assume what I see. Well, maybe don't come if you're going to act like a jealous high schooler. You're right, I muttered. Next time I'll wait for the Uber receipt and hope it tells me more than you do. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't reply. We sat in silence for the next 5 minutes. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out and started typing, smiling slightly. I glanced over. Josh? I asked. She put the phone face down on her thigh. My sister, right? The rest of the drive home was quiet, except for the sound of her fingernail tapping against the glass window. I wanted to say something else, to pull the truth out of her like a bad tooth. But I didn't. Maybe I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. When we pulled into the driveway, she didn't wait for me to put the car in park. She opened the door and stepped out before the engine stopped rumbling. You coming in or just going to sit out here all night? She asked. I looked at her, really looked. There was a gloss on her lips that didn't belong to me, a scent on her collar that didn't come from our bedroom, and a silence between us that had been growing for weeks, maybe longer. And for the first time, I realized I didn't know who she was anymore. She didn't say goodnight when we got inside, just kicked off her heels by the door, left her purse on the counter, and headed straight for the bathroom. I heard the faucet turn on, the cabinet open, the spray of perfume, the same one she'd worn to our anniversary dinner 2 years ago. Back then it made my heart race. That night it made my stomach turn. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the dim light over the stove. The hum of the fridge filled the silence, steady and indifferent. I ran a hand through my hair, then opened the cupboard, pulled down a glass, and poured some water. Not because I was thirsty, but because I needed to do something. Anything. I waited for her to come back out. She didn't. Eventually, I turned off the lights and went upstairs. The bedroom door was half closed. I pushed it open gently. She was already under the covers, turned away from me, scrolling on her phone. Her screen lit up the curve of her shoulder, but her face was hidden. She didn't say a word. Not good night, not sorry, not even are we okay? Just kept scrolling like I wasn't there. I lay down next to her, fully clothed. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. That's when the real unraveling began. The memories I used to brush off started to come back. Sharper now, louder. And this time I listened. Like the night she came home late from work 2 months ago, claiming her team went out for drinks. She had lipstick smudged just slightly to the side of her mouth. I joked about it, asked if her drinks had been with a martini or someone named Mark. She rolled her eyes and said I was paranoid. Back then I laughed with her. Now I couldn't stop replaying that look in her eyes. Not anger, but fear. Like a kid who got caught stealing but didn't want to admit it. Then there was the time I walked past the bathroom and caught her spraying cologne on the inside of her wrist. Not perfume, cologne. I asked her why. She froze for a second, then said, "It's yours. I missed you today." I thought it was sweet. Sweet and kind of weird. But now I wondered if she was trying to hide someone else's scent, or carry it longer. The signs were there. Always had been. I just didn't want to read them. Her phone, once an afterthought, had become an extension of her hand. Always face down. Always on silent. The few times it buzzed, she'd glance at it, smile slightly, then tuck it away like it was something precious or dangerous. 3 weeks ago, I walked into her home office to ask if she wanted lunch. She was typing something, fast. When she saw me, she slammed the laptop shut like a guillotine. I laughed awkwardly. "Didn't mean to sneak up on you." She gave a tight smile. "Just work stuff." I asked what kind. She paused. "Reports. Boring. You wouldn't care." Maybe she was right. I didn't push. I never did. But then came the gift. It was our 6th anniversary. I got her a framed photo of us in Maine, the one where her hair's blown everywhere and we're both laughing like idiots. She got me a gift card to Auto King. Let me be clear, I've never worked on cars. I don't even like the smell of grease. I once stripped a screw trying to fix a license plate. She knew that. I smiled when I opened it, said thanks, and kissed her cheek. She nodded, already turning back to her phone. At the time, I thought maybe she just forgot. But now I think she just didn't bother to remember. There was more. So much more. Tiny things, but they started adding up. Like 1,000 cracks in a windshield. She stopped asking how my day was. Stopped sitting next to me on the couch. Stopped laughing at the dumb jokes I used to tell, the ones she used to roll her eyes at, but secretly liked. She started going to bed earlier, then later. Never at the same time as me. Started keeping the bathroom door locked. Started keeping her work bag zipped, even at home. I remember one morning, not long ago, I noticed a receipt on the floor of the passenger seat in her car. She asked me to grab her sunglasses, and I found it wedged between the seat and the console. It was from a restaurant across town. One we'd never been to together. 2 entrees, 2 drinks. Date and time stamped on a day I was at my parents' house, helping my dad fix the water heater. She told me she was working late. When I handed her the sunglasses, I casually asked, "You ever eat at Madrigal?" Her eyebrows jumped for a split second. Not long, but long enough. "No," she said. "Why?" I shrugged. "Saw an ad. Looked fancy." She nodded. "Too expensive for me." That night, I checked our credit card statement. She paid cash. For a while, I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just jealous, insecure, maybe projecting. I even Googled signs of emotional overthinking in relationships at one point. That's how deep I was in denial. But when someone looks at you every day and chooses to see past you, that's not imagination. That's reality wearing a different face. I started testing her silently, leaving questions open-ended to see how she filled them, mentioning names I made up just to see if she flinched. Once, I asked if she knew anyone named Chris. She paused, then shook her head. 2 weeks later, I saw a notification pop up on her laptop while she was in the shower. Facebook message from Chris T. She told me she didn't use Facebook anymore. Everything felt like a performance now, a carefully maintained script. She said the right things, kept the house clean, posted photos of our dog with captions like, "Family nights are the best 2 hearts." But there was no warmth, no eye contact, no us. And me? I was complicit. I played my role. The supportive husband, the dependable one, the guy who picked her up in the middle of the night without asking questions, who never demanded proof, who accepted vague answers and shrugged off disappearing acts. I let it happen. I wanted to believe in her more than I wanted the truth. But that night, the night she smelled like someone else, that was the crack that broke everything open. The moment I realized I couldn't unsee what I'd seen, couldn't unknow what I now knew. So I started watching, really watching, who she texted, when she left, how long she was gone, what she wore when she said she was just grabbing groceries. I started keeping track. Quietly. No confrontation, no drama. Not yet. I needed more than suspicion. I needed something real. And deep down, I think I already knew I'd find it. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out, stuck in that shallow space where your body rests but your mind keeps pacing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in that parking lot, her hand on his wrist, the way she didn't pull away, the smell that didn't belong to our house. Around 5 in the morning, the light crept in through the blinds. I listened to her breathing beside me, steady and calm, like nothing in the world was wrong. That might have been the worst part. How easily she slept while I felt like something inside me had cracked open. When she finally got up for work, she moved quietly. Showered, dressed, applied makeup. I pretended to be asleep. She leaned over at one point, brushed a kiss against my cheek. It was light, automatic. Habit, not affection. "Love you," she whispered. I didn't answer. The front door closed. Her car pulled away. And just like that, the house felt different, quieter, like it was holding its breath. I sat up and stared at the wall for a long time. I wasn't angry, not yet. I felt hollow, like the version of me that trusted her had finally bled out overnight. I told myself I wouldn't snoop, that if I crossed that line, there was no coming back. But I also knew something else. I couldn't keep living in maybe. I needed certainty, even if it hurt. Her laptop was on the dining table, closed, but not locked. She never changed her password, said she had nothing to hide. I almost laughed at that. My hands shook when I opened it. The desktop loaded slowly, each second stretching thin. At first, everything looked normal. Work folders, bills, photos of our dog, a playlist titled Focus. I clicked around, hoping I'd be wrong. Hoping I'd feel stupid for doubting her. Then I saw the folder. Work Docs 2023. The name was bland. Intentional. I clicked it. Inside were dozens of files. Not documents. Photos. Her. Him. Josh. At a company event, his arm around her waist. At a bar, leaning in close, her head tilted toward his shoulder. In a hotel room mirror, her reflection caught mid-smile, his hand visible on her hip. In one photo, he kissed her shoulder. In another, she was lying on a bed wearing one of my white shirts. His arm entered the frame like it belonged there. I felt nothing at first. No rage, no heartbreak, just a dull pressure in my chest, like someone had pressed pause on my emotions. Then I opened their messages. She didn't even bother to delete them. "I can't believe how easy this is," she wrote. "He still thinks we're trying to fix things. I felt alive with you last night. Just tell him traffic. He never questions it." Each line landed quietly. No drama, no explosion, just confirmation. I sat back in the chair and stared at the screen until my eyes burned. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was cover, convenience, a story she told so she could live another one. When she came home later that day, she acted normal. Kissed my cheek, asked about dinner, told me a story about work that I knew was fake because I'd already read the truth. That night, she made breakfast for dinner. Eggs, toast, coffee. Hummed while she cooked, wearing my old hoodie like it still meant something. I watched her move around the kitchen, comfortable in the lie. The laptop sat open on the table behind her. She noticed it, froze for half a second, then kept going. "You want coffee?" she asked. "I saw everything," I said. She nodded. No denial, no shock. "You always said we'd grown apart," she replied. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a quiet rewriting of history. I didn't yell. I didn't leave. I didn't cry. I just disappeared. I moved into the guest room, ate alone, stopped asking questions, started transferring files, opening accounts, making plans she didn't know about. Each day, I felt less like a person and more like a shadow passing through my own life. But shadows see everything, and I was finally done pretending not to look. She was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. The scent hit first: scrambled eggs, toast, a hint of cinnamon from the coffee she liked to sprinkle with sugar. The kind of breakfast she used to make on Sundays when we still tried. When we'd sit across from each other in pajamas and share the crossword. She hadn't cooked for me in weeks. Now, here she was, humming softly to herself, barefoot in my old hoodie, acting like nothing in the world had happened. The same hoodie I wore the night I proposed. It hung off her like it didn't belong anymore. She turned around when she heard me, gave me a smile, soft, casual, the kind you give a neighbor or someone you just ran into at the store. "Not your husband." "Morning," she said. I didn't answer. She flipped the eggs in the pan, unbothered by the silence. "You want coffee?" she asked. "I made it how you like it. Dash of cinnamon, just enough sugar to cut the bitterness." I looked at her. Not the woman in front of me, but the person I thought she was. And I saw it clearly for the first time. That person didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. She gestured toward the mug already on the counter, steam rising lazily from the top. "I saw everything," I said. The words were calm, flat, like reading a line off a script. I didn't raise my voice, didn't look away. She froze for half a second. That was all. Then set the spatula down gently and leaned her hands on the counter. "You went through my stuff?" she asked, her voice low. No fear, just tired. "You left the laptop open." She nodded once, almost like she'd expected this moment, just didn't know when it would arrive. "You always said we'd grown apart," she replied. She said it like it was a fact, like she was citing something from a textbook. A reasonable explanation, a logical cause for betrayal. I waited. She didn't elaborate, just plated the eggs, cut the toast, slid it across the counter in front of me like it meant something. Then she sat across from me, coffee in hand, hair still damp from her shower, and stared down into the mug like it held all the answers. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said after a while. At first it was just, I don't know, talking. He listened. He asked questions. You could have asked me. You stopped answering. I blinked. So you slept with someone else because I wasn't a good listener? She didn't flinch. That's not what I said. No, I said. But it's what you meant. She rubbed her temple, took a long sip of coffee. We've both been unhappy for a while. You just didn't want to admit it. I didn't respond. I watched her eat like we weren't living in the wreckage of our own life. Like her mouth hadn't whispered lies. Like her lips hadn't tasted like another man's cologne. She picked at her toast. I don't know why you're acting like this is some huge shock. I almost laughed. You want credit for giving hints? She looked up, met my eyes for the first time that morning. I want honesty. From both of us. You gave yours in a hotel room, I said. A pause. Then she sighed. What now? She asked. Not pleading. Not angry. Just bored. Like we'd reached the part of the story she didn't care about. I don't know, I said. But I'm not doing this version of us anymore. She stood, walked to the sink, rinsed her plate. Casual. Effortless. Like this was all just another Wednesday. When she turned back around, her eyes were clear. We can talk to someone. A counselor. If you still want to. I didn't answer. I looked around the kitchen, at the framed photos, the spice rack we built together, the spot on the wall where she once spilled wine and we joked about it being haunted. None of it felt like mine anymore. I don't want to fix something you already replaced, I said finally. She froze, fingers wrapped around her mug. I'm still here. No, I said. You left a long time ago. You just took your time telling me. Another silence. The worst kind, the kind that lingers like fog. She didn't try to stop me when I pushed back my chair and stood. Didn't chase me when I walked toward the hallway. I paused in the doorway, hand on the frame, and said without turning around, You made your choice, Kim. I'm making mine. Then I went upstairs. And she didn't follow. I didn't storm out. There was no suitcase dragging behind me. No slamming doors or shouted ultimatums. I didn't make a scene. I didn't even cry. What happened between us had already done all the screaming. So I chose silence. A quiet, cold withdrawal that started the moment I left the kitchen. If she noticed, she never said anything. That night, I slept in the guest room. I told her the bed was too warm. She didn't argue. I kept my clothes in the hallway closet after that. Said it was for convenience. Again, no questions. She didn't ask why I stopped leaving my watch on the dresser or why the mug I always used vanished from the cupboard. She just adjusted. Like she had been waiting for the shift and was already past caring. I became a ghost in my own house. We shared a roof but nothing else. Separate beds, separate dinners, separate silences. Our conversations, if you could even call them that, turned into bullet points. There's mail on the table. You forgot the trash bins. I'm working late. Short, sharp, hollow. I started waking up earlier than her. Always before the sun. I'd sit in the living room with coffee and listen to the stillness. It was the only time the house didn't feel hostile. When she finally came down the stairs, I'd already be gone. Out for a walk, or in the garage with the door cracked open just enough to let the cold seep in. I wasn't trying to punish her. I just couldn't stand to be seen anymore. Not by someone who'd already chosen to look past me. At first, I thought she'd push back. Ask where I was going. Try to talk. She never did. The days bled into each other. We stopped making plans. We stopped pretending we were okay. She didn't kiss me goodbye anymore. I stopped watching her walk away. There were nights she stayed out late. Claimed she was working or out with coworkers. I didn't ask. She didn't lie well, but she didn't have to. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I already had the ones that mattered. Instead of confrontation, I turned to clarity. I made copies of every important document. Bank statements, insurance, the deed. I scanned everything onto an encrypted drive. I changed my passwords. Set up a new checking account in my name only. Small, careful steps. Not out of revenge, but out of self-defense. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted to protect whatever pieces of me she hadn't touched. I made a habit of checking our shared credit card. Not obsessively, just enough to track the patterns. Fancy coffee shops nowhere near her office. Gas stations across town. Hotel bars listed as business expense. I knew what they meant, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started decluttering. My side of the closet emptied one item at a time. A shirt here, a jacket there. Slowly shifted into the guest room. I made space in drawers and files. Removed myself piece by piece from the shared life we built. And she never said a word. Maybe that was her way of helping me leave. Or maybe it was just easier than facing the truth. She began dressing up more. Straightened her hair again. Polished nails, new heels. Came home later and later, sometimes slipping into the house like she was a teenager sneaking past curfew. But I wasn't her parent. I wasn't anything anymore. Just a name on a mailbox and a shadow at the dinner table. Once, she made pasta and set 2 plates. I thanked her, ate in silence. She asked how work was. I said, fine. That was the longest conversation we had all week. I started spending more time in the office. Not the one at work. The spare room upstairs I once used for taxes and fantasy football. I brought in a chair, a lamp, moved my books in. Started calling it mine. It was the only space in the house that didn't smell like her perfume. I'd sit there with a notepad, scribble out budgets, lists, steps. A way out that didn't leave anyone bleeding. I didn't want her ruined. I just wanted to stop feeling ruined myself. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me from the hallway. Not with guilt. Not with sadness. Just confusion. Like she hadn't expected me to stay this long. Like I was breaking some unspoken rule. She asked once, "Why are you still here?" I shrugged. "Habit, I guess." She didn't laugh. She didn't ask again. But I knew she was waiting for the moment I'd walk out with a duffel bag and a suitcase. She probably rehearsed the scene in her head. Maybe even had a version where she cried and asked me to stay, just to feel better about herself. I wasn't going to give her that, because I wasn't going to leave in a rush of emotion. I was going to walk out calm, prepared, unshaken. But first, I had to finish disappearing. Jade showed up on a Thursday. No warning. Just walked through the door with a suitcase and a smile. "Surprise," she said, arms wide. She was supposed to be in Seattle finishing her second year. "Felt homesick," she added, hugging Kim tightly. Kim lit up like the past month hadn't happened. Pulled out photo albums, made cheesecake, acted like we were a family again. I played along barely. That night, after Jade went to bed, I left the divorce papers on the kitchen table. Kim saw them. She whispered, "Not while she's here, please." I said, "You had a choice. So do I." A week later, Kim moved out. No yelling, no begging, just a key on the table and silence. Jade found me on the porch that night. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "I just didn't want to believe it. Now I run at dawn, drink coffee alone, and talk to strangers who don't ask about her. I'm not searching for anyone new. I'm just learning to exist again. If you feel invisible in your own life, know this. You don't owe anyone your disappearance. Not even the person who stopped seeing you.